STRATCOM installed a new commander at Offutt Air Force Base today. Today's shift puts General Cotton at the head of the Strategic Command, which is responsible for the global command and control of U.S. strategic forces. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin was at today's ceremony in Bellevue. In his remarks, Austin spoke on the importance of STRATCOM in avoiding the risks of nuclear war as China and Russia continue to diversify their nuclear forces.
And as the Kremlin continues its cruel and unprovoked war of choice against Ukraine, the whole world has seen Putin engage in deeply irresponsible nuclear saber-rattling. So make no mistake, nuclear powers have a profound responsibility to avoid provocative behavior and to lower the risk of proliferation.
The last time there was a change of command at Offutt was in 2019 with Admiral Richard. The deal